brand new Iran video just dropped. Nice.
Welcome to the fourth week of the war.
Content. Steal some content.
Welcome to the fourth week of the war in Iran. And while in our last update,
He's biased. Yeah. It's the time to be biased on this world. Russia, Trump, and anyone who goes on protesters. Oh, I'm biased. We live in a world now where you have to take a side. You can't be neutral on a moving train, bro. Enemy of mankind.
Might be here for a long time. President Trump quickly contradicted us, posting on Truth Social that he was considering winding down the war in the Middle East because they were close to achieving their military objectives. This statement came just hours after it told reporters outside
Buddy, I would love to do the Isle Night stream, but the stream sniping will murder me in a second. I will just fully get murdered instantly.
White House that he didn't want to do a ceasefire because Washington was, and we'll quote him here, literally obliterating the other side. End quote. While such contradictory statements are to be expected from President Trump, given his well-documented history of saying mutually incompatible things, we have reason to believe, for the first time since the war began, that Washington is seriously considering an offer. On the 20th of March, Axios reported the Trump administration believed they needed just a month to weaken the Iranians with more strikes, take Karg Island, and use it as a bargaining chip in future negotiations.
Karg Island.
The next day, Axios broke the news that Washington...
If I was Iran, I would do a deadman switch on Karg Island. It's secure or something, right? If you land on Karg Island, we will self-destruct it. That would be clever, I guess. Stuff happening.
Had begun an initial discussion on what peace talks with Iran might look like. According to an American official who spoke to the outlet, Washington wants Iran to make 6 commitments. No missile program for 5 years, 0 uranium enrichment, decommissioning the nuclear facilities bombed last year.
I like how they say things I'm literally doing right now.
Yep, and strict outside monitoring of the creation and use of centrifuges and related machinery that could advance a nuclear weapons program. Washington also wants an arms control treaty with neighboring countries that would cap Iran's missile stockpiles at 1,000 and 0 financing.
Windows XP, best Windows ever.
For any of Iran's proxies. While this is an ambitious list of demands, it remains to be seen whether Iran will accept any of them, especially because the word of the day this entire weekend has been escalation, something the Iranians seem to be doing all too well. Strikes on Diego Garcia. Sometime between Thursday night and Friday morning, Iran launched 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, a joint US-UK military base located on a remote atoll in the Indian Ocean, roughly 4,000 kilometers from Iranian territory. The Wall Street Journal first reported the attempted strike, but it was later confirmed by a UK official source who told CNBC that the strike was unsuccessful. According to CNN, one of the missiles failed mid-flight, while the other was intercepted by a US warship. An Iranian official, however, has denied that Iran was behind the launch of the ballistic missile. Despite this denial, the significance of the attempt is hard to overstate. The Diego Garcia base, which hosts around 2,500 mostly American personnel, was deliberately built in a location that was supposed to be beyond the reach of most adversaries. For years, Iran maintained that its ballistic missile range was capped at 2,000 kilometers, and as recently as the 8th of March, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi...
Iranians are all sexy. All the men look good. The whole fucking government of Iran. They're good-looking men. Good-looking older men. It's like your mom would like to date them. You know what I mean?
Publicly stated that Tehran had intentionally capped its missile range at 2,000 kilometers because it did not want to be perceived as a threat beyond the region. This limit was imposed by former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, reportedly over the objections of the IRGC, as he wanted to signal to Europe that it was not in Iran's crosshairs. Jeffrey Lewis, distinguished scholar of global security at Middlebury College, told CNN that the IRGC had been waiting for Khamenei to change his mind or die in order to ignore the 2,000-kilometer limit. And now that he's dead, having been killed in the war's initial strike, the IRGC has free rein to do whatever they want with the missile program going forwards. How Iran was able to fire a missile roughly 4,000 kilometers, double its declared range, remains a matter of debate. Former IDF Air Defense Chief Ran Karchav told the Jerusalem Post that Iran likely adapted its satellite launch technology, which had been developing for years, to serve as a long-range ballistic missile. That would mean using the same multi-stage rockets designed to put satellites into orbit, but directing them on a ballistic trajectory instead. Justin Bronk, a senior research fellow at Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, suggested a similar explanation, pointing to Iran's Samor space launch vehicle as a possible basis, though he noted that such an improvised adaptation would come at the cost of accuracy. Others, such as Deka Ivleth, a research analyst at the CNA Corporation, suggested that Iran could have used a Khorram-Sharra missile with a reduced payload. That lighter payload would have increased the missile's potential range at the cost of its destructive power. While these are all plausible explanations, the truth is no one knows for sure how Iran managed to pull it
Obviously,
off,
beating the
and
USA
short
is
of
a
a
little more
miraculous
entire,
feat of journalism, we probably won't know for a very long time. The collapse of that cap changes the threat landscape for countries well beyond the Middle East. Trita Parsi, co-founder of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, told CNN that the attempt suggests US bases previously thought to be beyond Iran's reach may now be within it, along with American warships that had been stationed 3,000 kilometers away under the assumption that this was a safe distance. For countries like Romania, which have allowed US to use their air bases for refueling, surveillance, and satellite communication, that decision has become a lot riskier. Parsi also raised a question about how Iran was able to target the base at all, noting that Tehran lacks its own satellite coverage over much of the Indian Ocean. That intelligence,
Satellites must
said,
be so important
was most likely
in
coming
war
from
nowadays.
Russia and China. Parsi
USA
claims
have all of
that
them,
this
pretty
was an
much?
element of the war that has taken the Trump administration by surprise. The Diego Garcia attempt is part of a broader pattern of intelligence gaps that have surfaced throughout this war. Before Operation Epic Fury began on February the 28th, most international estimates of Iran's ballistic missile stockpile were in the range of 2,000 to 2,500. The IDF entered the war estimating approximately 2,500 ballistic missiles in Iranian hands, with ACLED putting the figure at around the same number.
That's
And
actually
yet,
how many
by
drones
day
they
10,
sold them.
The Jerusalem Post reported that roughly 2,410 ballistic missiles had already been fired, with Iran still launching them. And this is not counting those that were destroyed in American and Israeli strikes on storage facilities. There are three possible
Stop selling
explanations
energy?
for this.
I guess
One,
I
that
have
even the most
to.
aggressive estimates had significantly underestimated Iran's
I have
missile
to.
production and stockpiles. Two, that despite extensive
Almost
efforts
out of
by
depth,
Israeli
bro.
intelligence to infiltrate Tehran, the government had successfully kept a large part of its arsenal hidden. Or three, as the IRGC has claimed, missile production has continued even during the war. While this claim deserves a healthy dose of skepticism given the extensive damage that the combined force has wrought on Iran's military infrastructure, the fact that they are still firing missiles and are still attempting strikes as ambitious as the one on Diego Garcia means it's a possibility that's worth considering. So to step back and take stock, US and Israeli intelligence appears to have underestimated how many missiles Iran had, underestimated the range of these missiles, and did not anticipate the degree to which Russian and possibly Chinese intelligence support would extend Iran's ability to strike targets far from its borders. These are not small gaps. We also have to talk about the fact that Iran denied launching these missiles. Given how outspoken Iran has been throughout the entire war, most people would
anti-air
expect them
rockets?
to take
Takes
credit for this
forever
attack,
to
even if
research
the
air, man.
missiles were
Holy crap.
intercepted. However, according to Dr. Anasay Tabrizi, a fellow in the Middle East and North Africa
Here comes a
program
comment
at
that she's
Chatham
hot.
House,
3,
that's
2.
not necessarily the case. She told Al Jazeera that Iranian denials tend to surface specifically when attacks cross new red lines or hit
Sexist.
targets that could provoke a wider response. A denial in this context is less about rejecting responsibility and more about trying to contain the consequences of what was just demonstrated. Escalation and de-escalation. Against this backdrop, President Trump posted on Truth Social late Saturday night that if Iran did not fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, the United States would hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. This ultimatum came barely 24 hours after he had floated the idea of winding down the war entirely, and as Axios noted, the reversal signaled that the Hormuz crisis has become the issue he cannot walk away from, even while apparently searching for an exit. Gas prices in the US hit $3.94 per gallon over the weekend, according to AAA, up more than $1 from a month earlier, and Brent crude has surged nearly 50% since the war began. Again, though, we come back to what appears to be the defining issue of this war, the fact that the US and Israel are not the only ones capable of escalating. Following Trump's threat, the Speaker of Iran's parliament posted on X that if Iranian power plants and infrastructure were targeted, vital infrastructure, energy, and oil facilities across the entire region would become legitimate targets and would be irreversibly destroyed, something he helpfully pointed out would mean that oil prices would remain elevated for a really long time. The spokesman for the Qasim al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, the Unified Combatant Command...
He has really weird sources, which I like. He doesn't use CNN. He's like CNR, the Central Committee of blah, blah, blah. Sources I've never heard before, which I think is a good thing. This guy has enough channels to fight the war. This guy has enough channels to fight the war. I don't understand that one.
...of the Iranian armed forces confirmed the threat, stating that if the United States
Lots of
attacks
tech
fuel
about
or
it.
energy infrastructure in Iran, then Iran will attack US and allied energy information technology, and desalination infrastructures across the Middle East. The IRGC, meanwhile, warned that the strait would be completely closed and would not reopen until any destroyed power plants were rebuilt. And Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency released a list of major US tech companies operating in Israel and the Gulf that it said would be targeted, including the offices of Google, Microsoft, Palantir, IBM, Nvidia, and Oracle. But while Iranian threats...
I'm going to sound like such a communist lip-taught asshole, but that kind of makes them sympathetic, bro. A joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. Nuking Palantir, man? Just a joke.
Have remained focused on Israel and America. The countries actually at risk if this escalation goes forward are the ones already absorbing the heaviest fire.
Let's get that fuel up,
the UAE has had to deal with more projectiles than any other country in the war, with the Jerusalem Post reporting 1,468 directed at the Emirates by day 10. Bahrain, which hosts the US Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters and was struck on the first day of the war, is small enough that even a limited campaign against its infrastructure could cause severe damage. Kuwait's Bina al-Ahmadi refinery, one of the largest in the Middle East, has already been hit multiple times by Iranian drones. Targeting desalination plants would be a red line because they, even more than oil, are the lifeblood of the Middle East.
They make water, and they already attacked one, I think right here somewhere, they attacked a desalination plant. Desalination plants, I told you to invest in them, bro. They're building.
As we noted in a previous video on our other channel, Homefronts, if these desalination plants are targeted, it could cause a catastrophic humanitarian crisis.
Crazy water crisis down there,
where a desalination plant was hit by an Iranian drone, is
some high-level politician in, I believe, I'm really interested in water, right? And a high-level politician in Iran said a couple of years ago, there's actually a very real chance that Tehran might run out of water, and we have to evacuate millions of people out of the city.
Especially vulnerable.
This whole area has crazy water issues people don't think about a lot.
Where desalination provides roughly 90% of the country's
300 missiles.
According to Danny Satrinovitz, a fellow at the Atlantic Council, even a blockade of Karg Island, the single most important node in the country's oil economy, wouldn't force Tehran to open the strait. This, despite around 90% of Iran's crude exports passing through its terminals. Satrinovitz wrote on X, and we'll quote him here, "This reflects a persistent misunderstanding of Iran's strategic doctrine. For Tehran, control over the strait is not just economic leverage, it is a core component of regime survival and deterrence. Under pressure, Iran is more likely to escalate."
How do missiles work? Like rates.
At the time of recording, the 48-hour deadline has not elapsed, but if it passes and Trump keeps his word, then the war will enter its most dangerous phase yet. If Trump doesn't follow through with this threat, then Iran can claim a strategic victory, which will significantly hamper any attempts by Washington and Jerusalem to claim that they are winning. But this weekend has
Marco Rubio will be like a dog behind him. He used to say, "Marco, you have a dog wife. Your wife looks like a dog." And then 7 days later, I endorse Donald Trump, man. A fucking pussy.
Not been all escalation everywhere. The Jerusalem Post reported that Iran has decided to limit its attacks on Saudi Arabia out of concern that continued strikes could trigger a direct Saudi military response. Sources that spoke to the outlet said Iranian officials believe the Saudis are on edge, and continued large-scale attacks could push Riyadh to take a step it has so far avoided, directly striking Iran. Saudi officials have previously made clear, including in discussions with Tehran, that their red line is any attack on electricity generation and water desalination facilities. If Saudi Arabia decides to strike Iran, it raises the question of whether Pakistan will follow suit, given that the two countries signed a much-hyped defense pact in 2025. In addition to scaling back attacks on Saudi Arabia, Iran has decided to avoid targeting Qatar after a strike on the Ras Laffan plant took out roughly 3.5% of the world's entire supply and was seen as extreme.
And who is the big loser of this war? It's very important to me, right, to always... What really is happening since 9/11 is we're all becoming very desensitized. We're all becoming very unemotional, right? We just see this stuff and we feel nothing anymore. This is the weirdness with 9/11. When I was young and 9/11 happened, it was such a monumental event, even in Germany. It was like everyone was sad. There was a darkness. There was a minute of silence in German schools for 9/11. It was a big thing. People cried. I cried. Everyone cried. Nowadays, dude, a fucking Tomahawk missile is hitting a school, killing little girls. And it doesn't matter. It's just nothing anymore. No one feels shit anymore. And they really managed with this whole social media internet shit to make us so fucking unemotionalist, man. It's crazy, dude. Crazy, man. How much humanity we lost.
Extremely escalatory. Strikes against Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE, however, will continue as usual, according to the Jerusalem Post sources.
I mean, was alive when 9/11 happened? I even remember it, man.
As we mentioned in a previous chapter today, Russia has been providing Iran with intelligence to support its strike campaign. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russia has been providing
Iran...
Iran...
comments, and you are very poorly informed if you think your take is anything but memes. Please elaborate on that.
...with the precise location of American military forces, as well as those of its regional allies. The Kremlin has denied this, but the evidence has continued to mount, and this week we got the clearest confirmation yet that Moscow sees its role in the war as a bargaining chip. Politico reported on the 20th of March that Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev proposed a quid pro quo to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner during a meeting in Miami on March 11th.
That Jared Kushner even has anything to say, man.
Moscow would stop sharing intelligence with Iran if Washington stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine.
Motherfucker! Oh, isolate Ukraine, please, and we will not do help Iran. Damn. I have no clue how you can tie thousands of people dying in 9/11 at a terrorist attack to whatever Tommy is saying. What? Ukraine getting thrown on the bus? I mean, that doesn't mean the USA is doing this. They rejected. USA rejected this proposal. Good.
Rejected the proposal. Dmitriev labeled the report of the proposal as fake in a post on X. However, President Trump seemed to confirm the existence of such an arrangement, telling Fox News, quoting him here, "I think you might be helping them a little bit." Yeah.
A terrorist attack? Never dead. I think you're having an aneurysm, my buddy. I'm making a little speech about how we're losing humanity and how back then, before the internet was big in 2001, something like 9/11 has really affected people a lot. And now you hear 5,000 people die somewhere in the world, no one cares anymore because we're really desensitized. What are you fucking talking about? You complete weirdo.
Yeah, I guess. And he probably thinks we're helping Ukraine, right? End quote. The fact that Russia is helping Iran didn't come as a surprise to most regional observers, because they are longtime allies after all. However, the fact that a Russian envoy could make such a proposal sparked concern among European diplomats who worry Moscow is trying to drive a wedge between
Chicken
Europe
stir fry,
and...
am I wrong? You say so many words, Tommy. You call chat retarded and act like you're correct. Please elaborate. What did I just do wrong in the last 5 minutes? Let us know. Chicken stir fry.
US at a critical moment for transatlantic relations. President Trump has previously raged against what he considers cowards in NATO who refuse to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz.
Cowards, man. Release the rest of the Epstein files, coward. At least I don't have to buy a fucking beauty pageant for kids. At least I'm not on 400 pictures with Jeffrey Epstein. At least I don't cheat on every single wife I have.
However, have shown little interest in participating in this war. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius put it bluntly, "This is not our war.
Anything I say,
we
you will say I'm retarded? Well, say something intelligent. It's your chance right now.
Consulted before Operation Epic Fury began, and EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas told Reuters that European countries simply do not understand Washington's recent moves. Former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Jim Townsend told CNN many countries are stung by how Trump and his administration have treated them, only to come back and demand help when they need it. Europe is also rightly concerned that they will be putting their sailors and ships in harm's way, also that Trump can say that he isn't risking American lives. And this isn't only proposed.
Look at the world. I'm like, yeah, we used to be more emotional about deaf civilians in 2001. And then this guy called me on Discord. Like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck?
About Iran that the Kremlin has made. Axios previously reported that Moscow was proposing moving Iran's uranium to Russia, which Washington also rejected. Despite the current disagreements between Washington and its traditional allies on this war, America rejecting Russia's offers is encouraging because it shows that despite Trump's public frustrations with European allies, the administration is not yet willing to hand Moscow a win on Ukraine in exchange for cooperation on Iran. And speaking of Ukraine, Kyiv has been playing a significant role in training American allies in the Middle East, despite Trump telling NBC News that the last person they needed help from was Zelensky. And we have to point out here that despite President Trump constantly belittling and undermining Zelensky, the latter has stepped up and is actually helping American allies in the Gulf to defend themselves. Meanwhile, according to Middle East Eye, Washington was stonewalling requests from Gulf allies to replenish their interceptor stockpiles, with pressure mounting on Gulf states to join Saudi Arabia to help Gulf states defend against the same Shahed-type drones that Ukraine has been shooting down for years. What the Ukrainians found when they arrived was, by their own account, alarming. The officer told the Times that he was astonished to hear reports of Gulf air defense crews firing as many as 8 Patriot interceptor missiles, each costing over $3 million.
Well, this shit makes me want to play Broken Arrow. You guys remember Broken Arrow, man?
At a single target. In some cases, using SM-6 missiles, which cost roughly $6 million a shot, to bring down a Shahed worth about $70,000. Ukrainian crews, by comparison, said they typically use 1 or 2 missiles to down a Russian ballistic missile and rely on a combination of vintage aircraft, interceptor drones, and electronic warfare to shoot down the drones. The Times reported that data from Ukrainian Patriot crew missions has been shared with allies who also use the system. However, the US and its allies in the Gulf do not appear to have paid attention to the complex calculations Ukraine has made to improve intercept rates. Quoting the officer, "I don't understand what they had been doing. What they have been looking at for the 4 years we've been fighting." Analysts suggest the gap comes down to operational methods. Gulf crews reportedly leave their batteries in automatic mode while taking cover, while Ukrainian operators stay at the controls and fire manually. That difference matters when you're
How
trying...
war became such a money thing, right? The Ukraine versus Russia is just who can produce more drones right now, who can shoot them down. It's like a budget. It's like you have not 2 armies fighting, you have 2 budgets fighting in a way.
To distinguish between
Who's
a
more
$70,000
efficient
drone and a manned aircraft, and when you want your interceptors to last as long as possible. The Ukrainian officials also criticized how American allies in the Gulf have been storing their air defense systems, which allowed cheap drones to cause over $1 billion in damage. If American allies could implement the lessons from Ukraine, it could significantly reduce the cost of defending against Iranian drone swarms and free up their most expensive interceptors for the ballistic missiles that actually require them. And finally, we turn to Lebanon, where over the weekend, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz ordered the military to destroy all crossings over the Litani River and homes close to the border between the 2 countries. While Israel justified this as an attempt to prevent Hezbollah from moving fighters and weapons into the south, Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun called it a prelude to a ground invasion. IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, later...
They just had the fight in Gaza. They had the little attacks earlier, and they're probably still ready to go into Lebanon, man. Israel is strong, bro. They are strong.
Announced that the operation against Hezbollah was just the beginning, and it would be a prolonged operation. The Israeli military had already destroyed 3 bridges in southern Lebanon in the last 10 days, but Sunday's order extended this to every remaining crossing. Israeli warplanes struck the Qasim Bridge, a key highway link connecting Tar district villages to the north, with multiple strikes that left large craters across the bridge. Ramzi Kais, a Lebanon researcher at Human Rights Watch, told Reuters that if all bridges across the Litani are destroyed and the south becomes isolated, the civilian harm would be immense, with people cut off from food, medicine, and basic needs. While all of this was happening, Hezbollah ramped up its strikes against Israel, killing 1 person in northern Israel, the first such death from an attack originating in Lebanon. They claimed that the attack was targeting a gathering of Israeli enemy soldiers in the northern community of Miskavan. While only 1 person was killed in the attack, thousands more have died across the region, and that number is set to go higher as the war drags on and continues to escalate.
What's going on right now?
We hope that some form of deal can be struck to prevent the Middle East from...
What's the latest news? Iran media explosions near Tabriz.
But it's okay.
No injuries reported following Iran's latest basic missile attack, the 5th one today. So they're just throwing missiles around. Pretty basic. Yeah, pretty much just missiles flying around.
She slipped through my fingers like sand. Heard that she had a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Oh well, ship sail. She slipped through my fingers like sand.